temperature's up around 100 degrees, and the only way that I really know how to liberate and stay at peace with myself, be a better father, et cetera, is through rhythm. And as a broadcaster and as a journalist and as a patron of music, going to see live instrumental improvisational music has been key for not just enlightenment, but for being free and liberated and at peace. And most of the drummers that I've interviewed on this journey, they don't know how anything else to do. They just know how to play music. A lot of musicians are like that. And my guest today is somebody who really, he is a very humble cat, but a guy that I was able to connect with a few years ago, really legendary guy, Bill Lynch, pulled my coat to this guy and said, man, I've never heard, well, in fact, the cats like David Lindley were very hip to my guest, his drumming style, his ability to play reggae, assimilated to American audiences, but at the core, the indigenous rhythms of Jamaica are within my guest, and obviously just a big music fan in general. Steve Duck McLane, welcome to the Jake Feinberg Show.
Thank you, Jake.
Hey, I kind of wanted you to talk about how you connected originally with Bill Lynch.
Well, Bill was in a band called Lynch McBee, which was playing around the University of Kansas, Lawrence, Kansas, which is 35 miles from Kansas City, which is basically where Blue Riddim really got its start and was born. Although most of us were from Kansas City, we had two different band houses in Lawrence, and we all played the same haunts. So I met Bill through being a fellow musician, and we probably shared some shows, and we would go hear them and they'd come hear us, and we would just hang out after gigs. So I know him through music.
You I guess Blue Riddim, I mean, what year did you guys start to play on the bandstand live?
Well, a little backstory is necessary to put this together.
Sure.
So I grew up in, I was in high school, 65, 66, 67. So while I'm in high school, I'm driving around in my 57 Chevy, and people that you only needed to know their first names were on the radio. Wilson, Otis, James, Ray, Aretha. So I became not only enamored with R&B because that was the music of my time, but I was playing in R&B bands from age 14. I'm 75 now. And what happened was soul music took this turn after I was out of high school, and it kind of went into, comparatively speaking, somewhat of a lull. Like right there around 70, around the same time I was working for a short while. I was actually in Detroit working for Motown. We were...
Holy shit. Don't even tell me that you were working for Mike Theodore and Dennis Coffey at Sussex.
No, here's the story.
Yeah.
Do you remember who the band Rare Earth was?
Absolutely. And absolutely. They had Norman Whitfield.
Yeah, so Rare Earth, who became famous for covering the Temptation song and then got a lot of success. So what Motown did was it turns out they were grooming 2 or 3 bands simultaneously to go on the road with Rare Earth and open for them. And we were one of them. And it was at that time I was staying at these people's house, and they had just come back from Jamaica, and they had a couple of records. I heard them, and I'd heard, growing up, I'd heard Israelites, and I'd heard My Boy Lollipop, and I'd heard Hold Me Tight on the radio, not necessarily connecting it to Jamaican music. But as time went on, I understood something rhythmically was really compelling going on in Jamaica. So fast forward a few years, me and Bob Zahn, who was pivotal in Blue Riddim, main songwriter, one of 2 lead singers, we were working in R&B bar bands in Fort Lauderdale and Long Island. And there was this guy who had an incredible Caribbean radio show, Lister, Howe, and Low. And we were playing in this bar bands, and we're trying to tell the guys in the band, listen, we really want to pursue this music as well as play R&B. And they were really reluctant. But anyway, so we told Lister, we called him up on a show and said, come by and hear our band. So he said, I want you to come over to my house, and I'm going to cook some Jamaican food for you, and I'm going to play you some old calypso and old old reggae records. So we went over to his place, and when we were there, he implored us. He said, you two are like over the top on this stuff. You need to ASAP get your butts to Kingston, Jamaica. Wow. And when you get there, I want you to look up this band. The name of this band is Soul Syndicate. They are doing 85 to 90% of all the songs that are coming out under different names, but it's them backing up all these people that are popular now. He said they are the rhythm section of the moment. So we go down there, and basically it's a funny story how we met them. I won't go into that, but we ended up meeting them, and they saw how, like he said, over the top we were, and so they started coming to our hotel and picking us up every day and taking us on rounds. They'd take us to where they went and smoked chalice. They'd take us to wherever they were doing sessions. We'd go eat with them. We'd hang out with them. They became really close friends. So it was almost like an informal tutorage. So we started this band back in Kansas City in the precursor to Blue Riddim, which is called Rhythm Function. We started in late 74 and played through 75 and the first part of 76, but it was way too soon to do anything like that in Kansas City. We played for next to nothing any place we played, and all it was a rhythm section. But that same rhythm section in 1977 became Blue Riddim with two horn players added, as well as one of the horn players was the lead singer. And by then, Marley's starting to get the airplay, and it's the music is starting to happen enough that you can play college bars. Anyway, that's
this is really important because story. I don't know if you've ever crossed paths with the late great drummer Ron Tutt, but he played with Elvis and Jerry Garcia in the same year. He was a remarkable cat, and when in the early 70s in Houston, he was. There was a warehouse full of reggae records, and they were liquidating it. And he showed up, and he got a bunch of, Toots and the Maytals and other reggae records. That was a time feel of the music that was very foreign to him. And this is a really heavy drummer, and it took him a while to get comfortable with that rhythm. But I think the question I have is, those records weren't popping up in 72, 73. I'm talking like, Bunny Wailer. They weren't coming to the States yet. It was more like late 70s.
Yeah, that's the point I'm trying to make. So when Rhythm Function was trying to play in 74 and 75, people would come out and hear us because they were curious, and a lot of them were our friends. And to tell you the truth, we weren't that good at playing that style yet. We went right into a thing where we tried to play straight up Soul Syndicate stuff, but we didn't have the chops they had. The music of any place is truly represented by the people who grew up there. So people, like, if you're Santa or you're Foley and you're 2 or 3 years old, you're growing up and you're hearing Minto and Calypso and jazz and R&B. Yeah. Each music is a product of not only a certain place, but a certain time. So for us to try to assimilate it that quick was really difficult. But we did our homework, and once we figured out, the whole Studio One, Treasure Isle, all that whole connection, then we just went off the deep end into that.
Duck, is there were you mainly doing demos for Rare Earth Motown, or were there records that you can point us to?
We were in the studio to be recorded, but
what was the name of that band?
The name of the band was People, People.
Whoa!
And once again,
Oh
I didn't know
God.
it. I thought we were, but the one band they were grooming to go on the road with Rare Earth. But as it turns out, I find out years later, they were actually had either 2 or 3 bands going, and we're going to pick one of them. And to tell you the truth, I don't know what band, if there was a band that was picked, but it was a real important thing to them at that time because Rare Earth was taken off big time. And they wanted somebody that was a Motown artist to travel with them so they'd be doing kind of a dual promotion.
That is absolutely fascinating. Looking back on those early years, 74, 75, when you were trying to sound like Soul Syndicate, I mean, could you talk about what you were bringing to the music? I don't think you were just comping that stuff. You were playing original tunes. So what was...
We'd already started to play some original tunes, but it just to understand the style, the rhythmic nuance, the little niche that these people played with, and of course, it's changing all the time. What reggae music sounded like in '74 was different than what it sounded like in '76 and '77, and then again in '79, '80. So it was like trying to catch a wave in an ocean. To be able to play that style, that nuance, you kind of had to just basically absorb the rhythm. And in black music, every instrument is a percussion instrument. Each instrument is adding a rhythmic part that is so essential. It might also be chordal and melodic, but there's a rhythm that's attached to it. So if you take reggae music apart piece by piece, it's like the keyboard player could be compared to a conga player, what he's playing. The bass player is, of course, it's unto its own in reggae music. I don't even know what it's called. But he would be like in an African drum setting. He'd be the tuba.
Right.
Anyway, so to learn the nuance of because if the rhythm's not there, it sounds really goofy.
Absolutely, man. I dig.
Yes. So it took us years, but once we got it, then any Jamaicans we encountered were totally encouraging, especially Soul Syndicate, who are like our big elder brothers. Any place we went, we were encouraged by Jamaicans to keep doing what we're doing. And the funny thing, the real funny story is, how on earth did Blue Riddim end up playing on Sunsplash?
That's the greatest story ever, dude.
Let me ask that question for you and let me answer it.
Sure.
So when we finally made that first record on Flying Fish, we were kind of basically living in Chicago, and we hooked up with this one guy who was managing us, Brian Glenn, and he went straight to Flying Fish, said, "You guys got to record this," even though they normally do folk acts and whatnot. So they recorded us, and at my insistence, I said, if we're going to do this record, we need a Jamaican engineer in the studio to do this. We don't need an American engineer to do this. And I insisted, and they were, I held on.
I want to stop you right there and explain.
Okay,
is it all the miking tech? You were advocating because it was the miking techniques.
Not only was it the miking, but the way it's recorded and the way they load signal onto tape. Back then it was, analog.
Right. So talk about loading signal. This is really important because the loading the signal on the tape is something that I have not encountered. I've always thought it was how your drums were mic'd and how there was good leakage and that kind of stuff. But you were there, so please break it down.
Yeah, well, there's, of course, miking technique. How are the drums tuned in the first place? Yeah. Why did they sound like what they sound like? And finally, in the control room, the Jamaican engineers, which American engineers would never do, even if they owned the studio themselves, they'd redline it. In other words, there's that point where it starts to distort when it goes past the black. There's a line, and all of a sudden the little snake bar that's coming out is red, telling the engineer this is starting to distort and you're not going to get a clean signal on this. And so all the American engineers pull back from that. But in Jamaica, I've been in the studio and watched them record.
Wow.
They're redlining everything. And sometimes they'd redline it and double track it.
Oh my, this is great.
Play right on top of the part they just played and play it again the same way and record it. That's why those records sound so whacked from back in the day.
So wait, hold on. I don't want to get too sidetracked, but can you talk about a seminal moment with a seminal? I'm not really hip to the Jamaican engineers. Who was somebody that, when you were hanging with Soul Syndicate, you learned a lot from?
Oh my God! Well, there's so many of those great engineers down there at Channel One, which is kind of. I wish Jimmy Becker was. And by the way, he's somebody you need to talk to. Jimmy Becker.
Absolutely.
He played harp in Blue Riddim, and he lived in Kingston for 3 years and did sessions down there.
Oh my!
Anyway, I'm trying to think.
I mean, the redlining story is already an all-timer. I mean, that is the most ridiculous thing because I mean, you're right. The Americans are too uptight. They're too linear. Or there was like the bleed over those records. Anyway, I'd love you to talk about when your mind was blown by one of. I mean, because you said with Soul Syndicate, you were like, they were mentors to you. And that, and so the engineers obviously were pivotal too, because that's a inside straight. I mean, you lived that, you knew that life, and you were the one that advocated for the Jamaican engineer. That to me is badass.
So to Prince Jammy, who now of course is King Jammy, ended up coming and being there. But see, he's a remix engineer. Right. He's not a recording engineer. But I knew we were only going to be able to get one guy, and that was the guy I got the phone number of, and that's who I wanted there because he was such a big deal at the time. Of course, he's been a big deal ever since. Anyway, he comes up, and I said, stand right on top of it. And the guy who was recording, of course, didn't want to hit the red line. And because of that, there's only so much Jammy could say, but he did the remixing, which made it sound as good as it did. I don't know if you've heard that first album.
I just cannot believe that they put that on. Flying Fish is a bluegrass country label. I love they put that on there.
And by the way, on the Restless Spirit album, the guy who did the cover is Jaco Pastorius' brother.
Yeah, Jaco's spirit is everywhere right now. I just interviewed Alex Acuna from Weather Report. He got Jaco in the band, and then it just so. But I want to go back to do you believe that middle 70s period of Blue Riddim was the most free and sort of like that was the most fun period of your musical life? Because the only reason I say that is because I feel like you guys were channeling something totally unique. And
it was pretty unique.
I
agree.
And so ultimately, I just want you to talk about that liberation right now, because basically the road dogs that I go and tour, that I go see and promote and love, it's like dire in terms of what the gigs pay now, the actual gigs themselves. I mean, gigs paid decently back in your day. You could get by and get by with the cost of living. The only way these cats get by today is by the merch table. And that's just...
I know that.
And I know you do. So what I'm saying is, like, you could sing for your supper back then, playing the music that you wanted to play. And that doesn't... Yeah. And that kind of exists today, but to do that, it's like... It's pretty mercenary stuff out there. Was that the happiest period of your musical life, or was there an even bigger pinnacle?
Well, there's different plateaus,
right.
Because at first we were just because we were stationed in Lawrence, Kansas, so we were just going in circles from Nebraska, Iowa, Missouri, Arkansas, Oklahoma, over and over.
Oh my God, dude! Please tell me about that circuit, dude. That is the baddest. I have never. I've talked to cats who do the Wyoming circuit, Chitlin circuit, New York. Ron Carter on the gospel circuit, and you're on the freaking breadbasket circuit.
Well, and that's where all the old territorial bands, the swing bands of the 20s, 30s, and 40s were roving all the time.
Damn.
in those very states.
Wow.
And people in the Midwest, I think maybe are a little bit more appreciative, and they're also a little bit hungrier for music. They're not quite as jaded as either coast.
You're darn right about it. That's a very good point.
And
no,
so
that's really interesting.
Pretty much we were well received. As a matter of fact, I don't remember any gig where, one time we were erroneously advertised as a blues band at a dinner theater club.
Oh, boy.
After we played 2 songs, the guy stopped us and said, "When did the blues start?" And we said, "Blues? Well, excuse me." He said, "Well, your name is Blue Riddim." And I said, "Yeah, but doesn't mean it's a blues band." And I explained to him what rhythm was. And he goes, "Oh, we've done so." And so we played really softly the rest of the night.
So I want you to break this down for the audience. This is a perfect example. Dinner club. Real certain clientele. But are you going to tell me that the sonic nature of the music bothered the shit out of them, or that the rhythm is too uncomfortable for people whose ears are not big enough? I really would love you to, was it sonic, or was it the fact that the beat was a reggae beat?
Well, to tell you the truth, I wouldn't have even necessarily wanted to be in a blues band and play in that environment.
Absolutely.
It was inappropriate. The tables were right up next to the bandstand. There was maybe 2 feet, maybe 3 feet. I don't know.
That made America so magic back then. Herbie Hancock was playing the London House. People were trying to eat steaks, and he was playing 21-minute improvisational African acoustic music.
Mm-hmm.
And so,
okay.
And to me, what I'm saying is, I can hear your allegiance and loyalty to Jamaican culture, Jamaican vibe, and you've seen it from both sides. I wonder why people in this country, especially, or in your mind, where are we at musically in this country?
Well, I have some different theories about that. And first of all, you got to understand, like I said, there was what seemed to be somewhat of a lapse in R&B music, and right at that same moment, reggae came through the door, and reggae came hand in hand with something that it made it easy to understand reggae music. It's called marijuana. Very strong foreign marijuana was all over this country. At the same time, this music was introduced, and that's exactly what people did. They smoked joints, and they listened to this music, and it made all kind of sense. It's like it opens a rhythmic portal. Now, this is my own theory. I've never heard anybody else say this, but I'm stepping out.
Go for it, man.
And I think, and I'm glad it came along. I'm glad that's the way it worked out. I'm glad we had the chance to play it that early in the game. For me, though, it was like this opening of this gigantic door, because what I came to find out was all these different countries in the Caribbean, it's like a little miniature Africa. Right. They all have the indigenous folkloric beats of the tribes from wherever they came in Africa, and they all have their own little tilt and lilt. I think the reason the music of Jamaica is so taken up so well by Americans is because Jamaican music is a mixture of Minto, their calypso, and our old New Orleans R&B. And it's in 4/4. A lot of music in the Caribbean is in 2/4, and that does make a difference, even though it's kind of implied the same way, but 2 and 4 are very different. And anyway, so what I'm saying is, I'm digging it. I'm digging a gigantic door for me, and I started going from island to island. I've been to Antigua, to Barbados, to Trinidad, and enjoyed and figured out different things about those musics. And we've actually been playing over the years calypso and soca and R&B, and ska and rocksteady. We play it all together.
Early on with Blue Riddim, this is something that I talked with. I'm curious about. This is just more of an artistic point of view, and I'm not saying, even though the best kept secret is the drummer is the leader of the band, But at the same time, I'm not sure about your songwriting. But did you guys road test originals before you went in the studio? So many cats today record an album. Because there's a lack of a touring circuit, then they feel compelled to record another album because they have information coming out of them. But they can never really, the songs never take on a life of their own. And I wonder, like, when you were cutting that original record, even in Chicago, did you play those, did you road test those originals before you recorded?
Oh, totally. I mean, we were playing those. Those are songs that we wanted to and did play. Yeah. And they, some of them we played for a while and already changed the arrangement and the drum beat and everything, and the bass part to it. Yeah. They were evolving works that we were performing. And when we were playing, you know, the Jamaican covers that we picked them out very carefully to first and foremost. So, you know, obviously the singers could sing them and the band could play the rhythm, but we kind of only grabbed the very best of the best. So that way, when you're playing those songs right up next to your own songs you've written, they got to kind of stand the test. Mm-hmm. And it makes you write better songs. It makes you perform them better, and it makes you just give them more juice. Like, in some, you know, like, I mean, I could go on and on and on. I was going to say, back in the day, you know, when the swing bands were happening, and that went on for a long time, and everybody loved it. And really, the original use of jazz music was to make people dance.
That's right.
Boy, did they make people dance. And then all that time went by, and all those guys got tired of playing those same old songs over and over. So what did they do? They took the chord changes from the swing tunes they've been playing, doubled the tempo, and then wrote different melodies to them, and then invented bebop, which kind of was the precursor to rock and roll. I mean, once that door was open,
that's right.
It kind of segued into everything else that happened. I always point to New Orleans as even though I'm in Kansas City and people in Kansas City think Kansas City music is more important than New Orleans, but a lot of people say that. I would never say that.
I got to be honest, there's some bad... I mean, New Orleans is the best, but Kansas City is
is
really fucking great.
Yeah, well, back in the day, you know, did you ever see the movie Kansas City?
No, I know the tune. I've never seen the movie.
No, the movie.
Yeah, I've never seen the movie, no.
Watch it sometime, because they amassed some real guys to play what those bands used to play back in the day. People in New York and L.A. would give up their union card, and they'd come and play in Kansas City. And evidently there was a train that ran from Kansas City to Chicago to New Orleans and back to Kansas City. And it was always full of musicians, and they were always jamming.
Dude, what years was that?
Like, probably in the 30s. Oh yeah, somewhere in the 30s, yeah.
They were jamming all the way on the train. I mean, were you somebody who, when did you guys move to Chicago?
Well, that's like I said, once we got tired of just going in circles between those 5 or 6 states, finally somebody said, well, why don't you guys get a gig in Chicago? And then we said, well, why don't you get us one? And so someone did get us one. And when we went there,
were you playing? I would love. What clubs did you start playing at there?
Wild Hair, Cubby Bear, Biddy Mulligan's.
Oh yeah,
yeah. So and we were welcomed because our reputation preceded us before we got there. So it was.
No, you know what? The best thing about Chicago, it's very moderate, so very accepting, and you're coming in with Blue Riddim, and they're open-minded. There's an open-mindedness there, and it's still a healthy city, unlike Detroit or Milwaukee or something like that.
Yeah, no, Chicago's magical, and to me, my impression of it after living in Kansas City was it's just a bunch of neighborhoods attached to each other. It's because we'd play one club, and somebody would say, and I'd say, oh, we're playing in Evanston tomorrow night, and the person would go, oh, I don't go up there. I never go. I just stay right here in my neighborhood. And it turns out there's all these people just kind of hang out in their neighborhood. Not to say that nobody goes anywhere else in town. I thought that was interesting. I guess if you live in a town that's big enough, maybe that would be the deal.
You feel like, how did you learn to push yourself out of your comfort zone? I mean, I this isn't like it's becoming very clear to me why Brother Lynch connected us, but at the same time, like, you know, he was saying, he's like, David Lindley would be asking, where's, oh, Duck. David Lindley and I did 4 Cosmic interviews together. I never, unfortunately, met him in person, nor did I see him play live. I'm 46 years old, but I have the Kaleidoscope records and the El Rayo, and David and I just like this interview, we just went to the heavens. And if that dude is jonesing for Steve McLane, like, were you ever satisfied? I mean,
he recorded a Blue Riddim tune, right?
And I didn't know.
I thought I'd mention it.
Yeah, no. What tune is it?
I think it's "Oh Babe."
Oh my God!
It's one of it's
Lindley.
Bob's son. It's you could. It's a Google away.
I guess the question is, how did you remain hungry? How did you not get satisfied? Was it just that you were so?
You know what? Yeah. It's funny you would say that. I've never been satisfied.
Right. I guess that's the human condition. Yeah.
From when I was 14 years old, and I first heard James Brown, and I realized that's how I had to learn how to play drums. Still, to me, the most pivotal thing I've ever done was see James Brown live when I was 16 years old.
Why?
Nothing.
Clyde Stubblefield?
Nothing.
Yeah.
Nothing was a bigger imprint than that in my life. And I still have this picture of that band right here on my piano. I'm sitting at my piano.
Oh, beautiful.
My dad's piano. Anyway.
Hold on. Was Jabbo or Clyde on that gig? Because I interviewed both those cats, and the funny thing is, I was just talking about double drums earlier in another interview. Joe Cocker, Grateful Dead, Allman Brothers, and I asked Jabbo, I'm like, did you guys play double drums? He's like, no, we'd switch. He's like, maybe one of us would play a tambourine on a tune, but no double drums with JB. But did you see him with the Flames, or when he was just James Brown?
Have you? Okay, I have to answer your question with a question.
Yeah.
Have you ever seen the footage on YouTube of James Brown live in Boston in 1968?
I've not seen it.
Okay, so a few days after Martin Luther King was killed, there was riots breaking out all over the country. So James Brown rolls into town in Boston like 2 or 3 days later to play a live show. And, you know, the way they did those shows, they'd go in there and they'd run the door with their own people. And, you know, they'd grab $25,000, $30,000 in cash and drive on to the next city. Well, so they come in and they set up, and the police commissioner and the mayor came to him and said, you can't fill this auditorium tonight full of people. That's not going to work. He says, well, here's what we're going to do. We're going to put you on TV for free, and you can let in about 200 people to have some people to play to. And I guess the city paid him. I don't know.
Wow, man. This is Never Everland right now.
That's the band I saw when I was 16 years old. So just sometime get yourself and watch it. Just put Martin Luther King, Boston, James Brown,
God.
Or whatever.
I will absolutely. Dude, that is one of the greatest social justice intertwined with music stories that I've gotten ever in my life.
So since they were broadcasting that, it was preserved on Kinescope, and they've done a lot to kind of bring it back around, but it's still real shady and dark, and it just looks like it's magical. It looks like people from another planet landed and played this gig.
The Boston police commissioner was like, this is not going to work, man. I love the compromise, dude. That's what it's about, man. That is unreal. So you've never been satisfied. I mean, and so that constant, you know. Yeah,
so from when I'm 14 years old, I'm trying to play a James Brown drum beat, which took me at least till I was 15 and a half. I'm starting playing in bands very young. And like I said, that was the most important stuff, the most compelling stuff. And then when I stumbled into reggae music, first of all, I was able to, I know enough about rhythm and I have a good enough ear that I was able to ascertain very quickly that I couldn't play it worth a fork. So, because of that, I thought, well, I just need to submerge myself in this stuff. So at a certain point, all I did was listen to Jamaican and African music. I turned the TV off. When we drove around in Blue Riddim, we had a van and we had a stereo in it, and we had a jump seat between the two captain's chairs up front, and it was full of cassette tapes. And it was like going to school as you're driving from gig to gig. We're just playing old Studio One and Treasure Isle and old African music and listening to it all the time, all day long. This went on for years. And at a certain point, if you're a drummer, kind of something's got to sink in, and slowly but surely. And I'm still to this day downstairs with the headphones on, pulling out old records and listening to them and just trying to imagine, why is this guy playing like this? To me, the rhythmic thing is the most compelling thing. If you're playing some music for me, if it's not rhythmically involved, it's going to be hard for me to pay that much attention.
Dude, you nailed it, bro. I was trying to figure out a polite way to say that. So thank you for that, because it's did you, when did you guys sort of, I'm fascinated with this, Roy Ayers went to Africa and cut an album with this cat, but you say African music, when did you guys get hip to Fela Kuti?
Oh, we were playing Fela songs in 74 and 75.
No way, dude.
Yeah, no.
Wait, are you Fela records were in the States?
Yeah, and I was aware of African music because a few African records. Yeah, but Fela came through. He was one of the first records to come through. Sunny Ade,
right.
And
Manu Dibango.
Manu Dibango, of course.
And freaking I can see her face right now. Letta Mbulu.
Yeah, right.
But and she has some dope records. But Fela, when that Tony Allen groove, did Duck have the headphones?
Are you a drummer? Let me stop you right there. Do you play drums?
I'm a journalist. Dude, music.
But have you ever sat down at a drum set?
Yeah, no, I've felt the four-way coordination. I can play. I jam with my friends. I'm not a musician. I'm not a professional.
Well, the reason I ask you that question like that is because you just cited the man, the Don, Tony Allen. That dude.
Well, that sort of
he's in a class all by himself.
Thank you for reinforcing. Yeah, absolutely. And explain to the audience around the world why.
Well, because what he's doing, African music, of course, is played on drums that are played with hands originally. And so what he's doing is interpreting those pretty sophisticated beats that if you were listening to the folklore version of the music that they're playing, you would hear it played on hand drums. And hand drums doesn't easily necessarily translate to drum set. You got to be kind of oriented that way. A great example of somebody who was like that is Art Blakey. But to have kind of an African approach to a drum set is very unique. Anyway, he's like the Don. He made the funkiest beats, and it played them so steady. He's so scary. Do you remember? That must have been the most scintillating thing. Oh my God!
Now, in fairness, because I wasn't even alive at this time, but when you think about, I think about Alphonse Mouzon, Lenny White, Billy Cobham, and Tony Allen. Those fusion bands, those not that Fela was playing fusion music, but it was Afrobeat, and I just wonder, did you always, I just remember Michael Shreve telling me from Santana, when he first went to see Billy Cobham, Cobham's power, threw everybody up against the wall, and And Michael walked out of the gig and was like, "Yeah, that was amazing." I mean, they were all like different from a different planet. And instead of getting psyched out or quitting or feeling defeated, which I think is the goal of a great musician, is to inspire other people. He just said, "I'm not going to be that. I'm going to be me." And I just wonder how you stayed inspired, that you were never defeated, because that, to me, that's the pinnacle of rhythm, man. I mean, that's before the Lynn drum machine. That's before chips. This is like, I mean, yeah, Sly was tinkering with stuff, but it was still human rhythm, where it was coming from reggae, Africa, the States. How did you ever feel defeated? I've talked to cats like that saw bands and they were like, "I'm going to quit," but yeah, and they were talked back into it. And I just wonder, like, how you stayed inspired or didn't let it, how you learned to be yourself.
Well, I'm forced with being myself. I don't have any other choice. I would say, though, about maybe, between 10 and 20 years ago, I was somewhat discouraged. First of all, during this ridiculous, stupid COVID era,
yeah,
I was playing in two bands, and
yeah,
both keyboard players died. Not of AIDS. I mean, I'm sorry, not of AIDS. Of COVID. They died of just being musicians. I'll leave it at that. This musician lifestyle.
Yeah.
Anyway, so all of a sudden I had nobody to play with, and that was kind of demoralizing. And I'm looking around my house as I am now, and I'm looking at all these old records and I'm going, God, this is all irrelevant now. Nobody even thinks about this, much less wants to talk about it, play it, or hear it.
Welcome to the Jake Feinberg show, man.
Yeah. So, but here in the last year or two, I've started playing reggae music again, which has really given me a spark, and it's
Duck, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. What was the catalyst from discouragement to seeing the light? Like, how were you inspired to start playing again?
By having a band call me up and ask me to play with them.
Oh, wow.
And I've been playing with them, and we also have a little side project going on, too, and we've been working real hard on it. And like I said, really, music is the lifeblood for me. I mean, anytime music is going on, I'm fine. I'm good. I'm good.
Tell me about an epic Midwestern tour that you guys were on. I don't know if you know who Papa Molly is. Do you know Papa?
For some reason, the name sounds familiar, but I'm not.
He was in a band. It sort of reminds me. I don't know if you had a mixed race band, but he was in a New Orleans reggae band called the Killer Bees with Larry Fulcher.
Of course, the Killer Bees. Yeah.
Yeah, right. So sure. Papa, they were going through Louisiana back road, and one time they. This is an insane story. I'll send you the interview, but driving through Louisiana, and the Clan had these bookstores set up on the side of the road. So they drove by. Michael Johnson, legendary singer, was in that group, and they told him off, whatever. And then so they play their gig wherever they were going, and they were coming back home that night, and a car put a siren on the top of the car and pulled them over, and it turned out to be the Clan, and they laid them all down on the side of the road with, bound and gagged, and ready to kill them. And they're playing the same kind of vibe music that very similar, and same attitude. And Michael Johnson, so there were a few Clan guys there with guns, and he at some point just keeps inching closer, and then he hears a car coming, and he rolls into the road, and the car comes off on the side, and obviously something's up, and it really spooked the Clan, and they jumped in their cars and drove off. And it was, it blew my mind, and that was the early 80s. Did you have any issues with the Clan?
No, they never really found out about us, I guess.
All right, so the thing is that was were you all just like white cats, or was there any mixed? Was it a mixed race band or no?
Initially white, but over the years, black people in and out. Basically, Blue Riddim was functional from 1970.
They never found us. What did you say? The Klan never found you, man. I love it.
Say what?
But you said you said something to the Klan. I was like, did you ever have an experience with the Klan? And you were like, they didn't find us. They never found us. So yeah, okay. So it was. I mean, were there epic rock like road dog tours? Did you guys support yourselves through touring a lot?
Yeah, as painful and crazy as that was, but we were a lot younger then.
Yeah.
I'll let me put it this way: nobody had anything more important or better to do, and it was like, let's keep this. Jokingly, was referred to as the Band of Lost Boys. It's like, let's keep these guys together and keep them out of trouble and give them something to do. Right. And of course, the something that we were doing was something that we wanted to do and loved. So that made it pretty easy.
And you were getting paid for it.
Well, yeah, it wasn't like any kind of. But you're right.
I mean, dude. I mean, come on. In the '70s, and any major.
Back in the day, when you could check in, and each motel room was $37, and so you put two guys in each room. Yes, it was economically feasible, but still, basically, it was. What I remember, or at least how it's turned out in my mind, is basically, if we had a band on the road, we were touring with a Ryder truck, and we had 3 roadies, and we had full PA,
wow,
helping steel piano, B3 organ with 2 Leslies, Ampeg bass amp, drum set, guitar amps. We had all this shit that you don't, in this day and age, you don't have to show up with all that. It's there for you, typically.
I'm so glad you said that, because I want to read you this quote. I was transcribing an interview I did with a great LA drummer, Don Poncher, played with Delaney and Bonnie and all these fucking, and he's just a badass. But he said, and I want you to relate this to your own career. He said, he was talking about how he mics his drums in the studio, but then he said, I did Arthur Lee gigs in the 70s. I had one bass drum mic that was a foot in front of the bass drum. This is live. Maybe one snare drum mic and maybe one overhead, and that was it. It was play as hard as you possibly can play and project as hard as possible. We'd be playing out of 3,000 watt PAs and 2 Shure speaker columns for 30,000 people. It's crazy how underpowered it was. But to me, that's the magic, because at that point, Duck, you had to learn to increase the sonic nature of the music through soul and physicality. And that doesn't exist in a lot of ways today because the technology has advanced so much.
Yeah, I would argue on the side of technology, although it's been helpful to many, is really put the damper on the whole music vibe in general.
A lot of very mediocre stuff gets passed across as professional, and that you had to clear a bar back in the day. I don't care if it was Blue Riddim, Lindley, or Aretha Franklin. In order to get a record out, you had to clear a bar. And today, not only are we awash in mediocrity, we're also awash in visual material, not auditory. You guys were still an auditory learning generation. I mean, you listened to those cassettes on the bus. You weren't watching Tony Allen and how he played and how he sat and how he used it. Today, it is all visual. So, that is. But I just want to focus specifically on you when you were in a larger venue, how underpowered and how magical in some ways that time was, because you had to play so freaking. You had to project. You had to create your own sonic energy through soul.
What you're reminding me of in my lifetime is playing in soul bands in high school with the little tiny PAs,
right?
And nothing really mic to speak of except vocals. And you had to not only project but also create a balance within all the people on stage, so each person can hear each other without the use of monitors. There's no monitors to balance it out for you. Hey, give me some more trumpet. Give me less vocal. There's none of that going on. You're just a bunch of guys lined up next to each other playing the same song, and you have to be able to hear each other. So yes, while you have to project, you also have to be able to
That's right.
have your own mix, so to speak.
No, you have to self-mix. No, because that's the same way Al Cohn and Zoot Sims and Stan Getz and Woody Herman's band, the four of them had to do the same thing. And you have to, but anyway, tell me a little bit about my philosophy. Purdy told me in our interview, he's like, drummers should not wear in-ear monitors. He's like, the minute that you put those things
drummers should not wear what?
In-ear monitors.
Yeah, no,
and because the minute that you're listening to yourself, which means you're behind the beat. I mean, to me, can you just talk about how the environmental sounds of a live show affect Duck? Because I mean, sound has image too, and the environment, the nat sound, not being caught up or consumed with your sound, trusting in the sound of the band, trying to get to one sound, but not having this obsession of listening to how you sound.
Yeah, because when you're playing in an ensemble situation, to me, if you're playing right, you are, even though this is kind of abstract, you are listening to all the instruments simultaneously along with yourself, and you are making the judgment, how well not only does this fit together, but what's about to come up here real quick, and what do we need to do to push this along, going through my mind. But I'm going, what can I do to correct what I just heard that ain't too cool, but regardless of where it came from? So, yeah, that's how my mind's working. And to tell you the truth, when I'm actually playing a live gig, I'm like a bird in flight. That's pretty much home right there.
I mean, is it it's beautiful. I mean, do you try to pace yourself, or do you try to, I mean, for me, when I get to the bandstand, I want those cats out of their thinking mind right away. I want to go to the heavens. I want to go to the intergalactic. That's what music is about. And I mean, and I think the great thing is that, did you guys have a following of sorts too? I mean, did you have an indigenous traveling people selling burritos to get to the next gig? I mean, what was the peak of Blue Riddim?
Now, you just said two different things. You asked me, first question was, did you have a following? Yes, we definitely had a following, especially in college towns, and especially in towns where there was people who were from the Caribbean in the population, or else these bar owners never would have kept hiring us. It's all about, how many people are you going to bring into this bar? Right. We held bar records all over the Midwest back in the heyday, 78, 79. Like I said, we were functional from 77 to 86. Blue Riddim was.
Dude, 78, man. You were rolling into Wisconsin. I mean, how far would you go? All the way to Washington State?
we did both coasts. We did, East Coast 3 times, California 4 times.
Wow.
Like in all those years.
Was there any footage or audio captured of that band?
Yeah, there's footage of us playing live in Jamaica in '82. That was on that album that was nominated for a Grammy. Wow. Live in Jamaica.
Wow.
And there's footage of us playing in San Francisco. And I think there's some footage on, what's that thing called? Vimeo?
Yeah.
There's a thing on Vimeo of us playing New York City. And
I want to know the Sunsplash. Because Jimmy Smith, Bobby and the Midnights, the Grateful Dead, Carlton Santa, everybody was there. Talk about that scene. Like, were you playing middle of the night? I mean, I think the Dead came on one night at like 2 or 3 in the morning.
We were supposed to come on at 11 at night, And what happened was they pushed us back because they thought and understandably so, thought we'd be a flop and we'd piss people off who really wanted to jam. And so they pushed us back and they said, go back to the hotel and go to sleep. And then they ended up coming and getting us at 4 a.m. and said, okay, you're about to go on. So we're come out of a dead sleep.
Oh,
go there to Jerry Park. And, literally the people are laying on the ground. They're asleep. It's 4:40 in the morning or something like that.
Oh, my God.
The sun hasn't come up yet. So we're behind stage. We're getting ready. And we come on, and I'm walking up the stairs, and I'm pretty intimidated. I'm thinking, we're going to get our ass kicked. And I'm thinking they're going to be throwing, pineapples and cantaloupes and shit. Go, get off the stage. Who do you guys think you are? So we get up there, and right as we're starting to play, we play a couple of instrumentals, people are starting to wake up. But then right as we start the first vocal, the sun comes up over the mountains behind us, and the first rays of sunshine shoot down onto the field. And the first words of the first song were, "It's best to arise with a smile on your face." And the people went nuts. Completely nuts.
Dude,
and
that
I almost
is
dropped
epic.
The drumsticks. My heart kind of stopped and started again. I thought, what? This is where, and there's next thing I know, there's like 15,000 people standing up, jumping up and down. That was quite a rush. That would, if you asked me, well, of all the things that you've done, what would you point out? I would have to point that out as being about
seminal. That's seminal. That is seminal.
About as electric as it gets.
Holy.
Anyway, I'm so fortunate to even participate in any of this. The guys I have played with are all so good. We're truly blessed to kind of stumble into this. But it was so compelling. It seemed like you couldn't turn your back. As soon as I heard the music, it just took over my brain. And that's kind of what happened.
Duck, I really would love to do another set with you. We just cooked for an hour here. I had a ball, man.
No, that was cool.
And so yeah, let's we'll let this breathe for a minute, but then and I'll get you a copy of it. But let's definitely keep the conversation going, man. It's an honor to connect with you, man.
Oh, make sure you watch that James Brown 1968.
Dude, thank you for reminding me. And then there was another thing. There was a Kansas City doc.
The Robert Altman movie.
Altman, Kansas City.
Robert Altman. It's called Kansas City. Watch that movie.
Thank you, brother. Bloody blessings to you, man.
All right. Stay in touch.
All right. Be cool.
You too.
Bye.